Hello my viewers and welcome back to my channel. Now, I will come here to a crucial conversation about race privilege and the complexities of Asian American identity. Now, in this video, we tackle a pervasive narrative that Asian Americans have cracked the code and achieved unparalleled success under palm color supremacy. But have they really? Now, join me as we take a look into a heated debate sparked by Charlie Kirk's inquiry, where he's asking if the Constitution was written to benefit palm color people, then why are Asian Americans the richest people by race in America? Now, Asian Americans respond, shedding light on the flaws of this logic. Among them is Amy Chain, who notes that Asian Americans didn't crack the code. We are palm color supremacy's favorite cipher, masking the truth. Asian Americans have the highest median household income, but also the highest wealth gap. The top earning Asian Americans make 11 times more than the lowest income. Palm color people remain the highest earners in the United States. Now, we also take a look at Professor Ellen Wu's groundbreaking research, which reveals the model minority myth's sinister origin. So with that said, let's take a look at the videos. I will be right back.
It was written to benefit only white people. Why is it that Asian Americans are the richest people by race in America right now?
Because the Constitution wasn't written to make people rich.
What, was the Constitution written in Korean?
The Constitution was written to make people slaves.
Yeah, yet Korean Americans and Vietnamese are actually benefiting the greatest from this American experiment.
Actually, in California, as a direct result of Asian success, there were laws passed that stopped Asian Americans, or Asians period, Asian immigrants, from being able to become citizens or own land.
Chinese Exclusion Act, you don't recall
of Asian success. Structurally, there have been many roadblocks.
So you're proving my point precisely?
No, I'm not.
Trying to make a point?
So your point is that we were racist against Asian Americans and now they're the richest in America, so they went through a vast time of inequities and they rose above it and they're much richer per income and wealth than white Americans.
No, that happens because Americans realized that they lost all of the labor that was going to be possible for people to work on farms in California in order to exploit the land that was in California. There was no way for them to have people to work there, and that's why they brought immigrants back. That's why.
So what social program was designed?
Literally built on our backs.
With that, again, swearing and saying things like that doesn't make your argument any more valid. But
for me,
then if it was rigged for a specific group of people, Asian Americans are the richest by race. The second are Indian Americans, people from India, and the third would be white Americans.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah. So how is why is that?
This may be the most important thing that I ever say. Asian Americans did not crack the code. It is that Asian Americans are white supremacy's favorite cipher where it comes to writing the fiction that white supremacy doesn't exist. Asian Americans do have the highest median household income by race in the United States, and we also have the highest wealth gap, with the highest income Asian Americans earning approximately 11 times as much as the lowest income Asian Americans. Also, Asian Americans are not the highest earners in the United States. Those individuals are white people. The logic being exercised here would be as if I took Jeff Bezos' household income and the household income of an unhoused person and used it to prove that the unhoused person has no problems because their median household income is billionaire. But the short answer to this is the Asian ethnicities that earn the most in the United States correspond to the Asian ethnicities that receive the vast majority of H-1B visas. In case your next question was, if the United States engages in so much white supremacy, why does it provide so much opportunity to immigrants in the form of H-1B visas? And it's because employers can pay employees who receive H-1B visas less than they would have to pay their non-immigrant counterparts. So it allows employers to gain access to highly skilled employees. And for the most part, immigrants who receive H-1B visas are able to earn more in the United States than they may be able to earn in their countries of origin, even if they're being paid less than their non-immigrant counterparts. Another reason why the United States does this is exactly to get people like you to ask this question. If Asian Americans seem to be doing well in the United States, that would indicate that white supremacy doesn't exist. The negative implication is if Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other people of color are not able to do as well as Asian Americans, the problem must not be white supremacy, the problem must be cultural to those demographics. However, if you look at Asian Americans who came to the United States not through high selectivity policies like H-1B visas and student visas, it becomes apparent that they do struggle with lack of equitable access to resources, and for them that has harmful outcomes very similar to the outcomes experienced by Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other people of color.
Okay, more context about the model minority myth. So Professor Ellen Wu writes about this in her book, The Color of Success, and I found her framework to be super instructive. So when we zoom out and look at the broader Asian American history, we see for long periods of time, Asian Americans faced severe immigration restrictions that prohibited Asian people from entering this country or becoming naturalized citizens. Examples of that, there are so many. We can see in the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Johnson-Reed Act, which set the immigration restriction quotas in 1921. We can see that in many Supreme Court cases, like Bagasin did versus the United States and Nozawa versus the United States, both cases essentially said South Asians and Japanese Americans or Japanese people were not allowed to become naturalized citizens, which extended to other Asian groups. There was also the Asiatic Barred Zone, where the US drew essentially on a map a zone around Asia and the Pacific that said these people were not allowed to enter the country or become naturalized citizens. So throughout the majority of Asian American history, Asians faced restrictions both entering the country or becoming naturalized citizens. And in her framework, Dr. Ellen Wu says that for the majority of those experiences, Asians were seen as definitely not white, because white European immigrants were eventually able to become naturalized citizens. Now, in the 1960s, referring back to my previous video with the socio-political context, that was when things changed, right? During the Civil Rights Movement, the Cold War, etc. And when the manufactured lie, the manufactured narrative of the model minority became a thing, and that was used to further anti-Black oppression, that was when the narrative shifted. And Dr. Wu says Asians were now seen as definitely not Black. But don't be mistaken, folks, still not white. So that is an overview of the framework through which we can understand Asian Americans' racialized position in the United States of America.
Happy AAPI Heritage Month! Ever wonder how Asians became the highest earning racial group in America? Well, it's because that stat's misleading.
This AANHPI, or the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community, encompass incredibly diverse cultures and geographies. We are not a monolith, and our stories and struggles look unique across each distinct community.
While the AAPI community ranks overall as the highest earning racial group, it's not a status shared by all Asians.
Exactly. The data on the surface doesn't tell the full story of our communities. Some groups, like Indian households, get paid remarkably high incomes, while others, like Burmese households, get paid incomes comparable to those of Black and Latinx households.
And that inequality can largely be attributed to immigration.
Policies need to be informed by the diverse experiences of the AANHPI communities. And we need data that is disaggregated to show the whole picture of what our communities need. Fighting poverty and wealth inequality in our communities is going to take not just policy change, but also breaking stereotypes and myths of crazy rich Asians and the model minority.
So please don't let the glitz and glamour blind you to the challenges our community faces as a whole. Also, stop attacking us in the street.
Seriously.
Since you ask, Black people in the United States on average were more successful than Asian Americans up until the 1950s and 60s when the United States started pushing the model minority myth. If you look at census data from the 1940s, Black people were earning significantly more than Asian people. But the United States was engaging in military actions in Asia under the guise of bringing democracy and fighting against communism when the rest of the world started to wonder, with the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, the Chinese Exclusion Act, and Jim Crow, what business did the United States have being in another continent telling other countries how to operate when they treat their own people so poorly? That's when the United States started to say, no, Asians are doing great. They work hard, they're quiet, they don't protest, and they are lifting themselves up by their bootstraps out of poverty. The problem is Black people who are protesting. And opportunities that were previously withheld from both Black and Asian people started being provided to Asian people and continued to be withheld from Black people. Then in 1964, when the Civil Rights Amendment finally passed and Black people were supposed to receive equitable access to those opportunities, in 1965, the United States opened the door to Asian immigration with the Hart-Celler Act and continued giving those opportunities to Asian people. Very importantly, the ability and resources to open, own, and operate businesses in Black neighborhoods, which effectively deprived Black people of the ability to invest in their own neighborhoods. Now, in case you're still thinking, no, it really is about emphasis on education, by the 1980s, an Asian American without a high school diploma was earning about the same as a white person without a high school diploma, and both were earning significantly more than a Black person without a high school diploma. So that has nothing to do with educational attainment and everything to do with the opportunities provided. But also that you inserted yourself in a conversation between two Asian Americans to weaponize Asian American identity against Black people is just gross.
Now, according to research, the model minority myth is a phenomenon that refers to the stereotype of, as well as data on, certain minority groups, particularly Asian Americans, as successful and well-adjusted, as demonstrating that there's little or no need for social or economic assistance for the same or different minority groups. Now, the model minority stereotype emerged in the United States during the Cold War in the 1950s and was first explicitly used as a term in the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement as an antithesis to African American claims of racial oppression, and has perpetuated notions that other minority groups can achieve the same success through hard work, and that discrimination and systemic barriers do not impede upward mobility. The model minority myth has been widely criticized as oversimplistic and misleading, and for being used to justify discriminatory policies and neglect of marginalized communities. Now, the myth of the model minority is based in stereotypes. It perpetuates a narrative in which Asian American children are whiz kids or musical geniuses. Within the myth of the model minority, tiger moms force children to work harder, while nerdy effeminate dads hold prestigious but not leadership positions in STEM industries like medicine and accounting. Now, this myth characterizes Asian Americans as a polite, law-abiding group who have achieved a high level of success than the general population through some combination of innate talent and pull yourselves up by your bootstraps immigrant striving. Now, while most people agree that negative stereotypes of Asian Americans are harmful, some still question the harm of the model minority myth. What could be so bad about being part of a group that's seen as being successful? Now, data about Asian American achievement typically lumps this diverse population together into a singular group. Taken as a whole, it shows that Asian Americans tend to hold higher degrees and earn larger incomes than the general population. Now, these successes are often attributed to differences in family attitudes toward education. From these metrics and attributions, the stereotype emerges that Asians are winning in their pursuit of the American dream. But when we break these numbers down, the myth begins to crack. Take pay disparities, for example. For every dollar the average palm color man makes in the United States, an Asian Indian woman makes $1.21 and a Taiwanese woman makes $1.16. A Samoan woman makes $0.62. A Burmese woman makes 50 cents. Now, the experiences of these groups are not the same. Now, the model minority myth is just one of a collection of stereotypes about Asian American people. Popular television and films exoticize Asian culture and peoples. If you're a man, you're a kung fu master. If you're gender non-binary or transgender, you don't exist at all. Now, buried under these stereotypes, the message is clear. Asian Americans are all the same and all different from all other Americans. On one hand, Asian Americans are often perceived as having assimilated better than other minority groups. On the other hand, Asian Americans are seen as having some foreign quality that renders them perpetual outsiders. It's a paradox familiar to every Asian American who regularly faces the question, but where are you from originally? Now, positioning Asian Americans as beneficiaries of the bounty of the American dream, the myth of the model minority ignores the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 and Japanese internment in the 1940s. Now, it suggests that the US has always been a welcoming place for people of Asian descent. In spite of the mass lead to the Qings of Asian Americans in the 19th century and the unaliving of Vincent Chin in 1982, the myth persists in spite of the fact that 1 in 7 Asian immigrants in America today is undocumented and facing potential deportation, a fact that is reportedly overlooked in our national conversation about immigration. Now, the model minority myth says Asian Americans are doing well today and must therefore have benefited from an elevated status among people of color, in spite of centuries of systemic discrimination. Now, the myth says that Asian Americans have played within the rules of the American system to their own group benefit. The success of some groups of Asian American immigrants is often held as an example toward which other groups should strive. It suggests that Asian Americans are doing well and that if other groups would only work harder, have stronger family bonds, and get over their histories of oppression, they too would succeed. Now, when paired with R-to-the-6 myths about other ethnic or racial groups, the model minority myth is used as evidence to deny or downplay the impact of racism and discrimination on Black and people of color in the United States. Given the history of that impact on Black Americans particularly, the myth is ultimately a means to perpetuate anti-Blackness. Now, the model minority myth pits Black and people of color against one another and creates a hierarchy in which Asian people are often represented at the top. By putting Black and people of color in competition with one another, the myth distracts us from striving together toward liberation for all. Now, the term Asian American was coined in the late 1960s as a means of harnessing the collective power of people of Asian origin, much in the same way by the term Hispanic was first used. Now, Asian American political identity was strongly inspired by the Black liberation movement. Today, more inclusive terms like Asian Pacific American or Asian American Pacific Islander signal the continued need for collective striving against similar experiences of racism and imperialism within our various ethnic subgroups. Now, this collective political identity remains important. At the same time, focusing solely on collective identity can perpetuate the model minority myth. The experiences of the most visible Asian American ethnic groups can hide the experiences of other groups. Now, some studies of educational achievement have shown that certain Asian ethnic groups, particularly those from parts of East and South Asia, indeed score very well in some subject areas. When students from these groups consistently do better than even palm-color students, it is easy for educators to take inherently biased actions based on a belief that all Asian students are innately intelligent and hardworking. Now, those same studies, however, reveal that other Asian ethnic groups have vastly different results. For example, Southeast Asian and Pacific Islander students, in particular, often underperform when compared with all other racial and ethnic groups. As an educator, it is important to understand the different histories and experiences of Asian American and Pacific Islander students and communities. Some of these communities arrived in America as refugees, escaping war or genocide, and some were imported as sharecroppers to replace enslaved people of African descent after the Civil War. Still, other communities, particularly those native to various Pacific islands, were here long before palm-color settler colonialism. Now, the notion that Asian Americans are the richest and highest earning racial group in the United States has been perpetuated for far too long. But is this narrative truly accurate? On the surface, statistics seem to support this claim. Asian Americans boast the highest median household income among all racial groups. However, this figure obscures a critical reality: the vast wealth disparities within the Asian American community. But I want to hear from you, my viewers. Share your thoughts, your contributions, your views on what you think about the videos in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching, and see you in my next video as I bring you another interesting video.